Might as well put this on for shits and giggles. Hello, I'm alone in Finland. This is EVE Online. And I'm travelling in my bowhead at the moment. And I just figured I'd put this on in case I lose this, because I'm going through Edema. And everybody knows Edema is a fun place. So all I'm doing is I'm moving some ships for faction warfare. I'm loading up again because I'm running low. I lost a couple the other day. I got into a fight with I was in a gang and I got into a fight, and the second that I entered, because they were calling for backup, and I landed with my Brutix, and the second I landed I got scrammed, which was fine, and then the FC shouts, right, everybody out, and I was like, really, have I just been bait to get all the frigates out? So I ended up losing something that was worth the combined value of all of the other frigates. It wasn't worth much. Sort of faction warfare goes. It was just a sort of standard. It was, in fact, it was exactly this. So just a plated Brutix. But it was a bit of a pain, just because of that sort of. I forgot to put my co-op on there, but just that sort of help. We don't need help. We're going. But, I'm scrammed now. Do you want to help me? No. Thanks for that. So always beware. Be in the gang at the beginning. Don't run to help the gang after they've got in trouble, because it gets you in trouble. But yeah, so I figured I'd do a little bit of fixations. I've also got. So in the main cargo hold, I've just got a whole load of ammo. I need the Quake for some of my ships. I need the Federation antimatter for some of the ships. I've got a couple of extra shield things and some spare drones there. And then the rest of this stuff, the only reason it's there is actually just these were extras that came from just running sites that I've picked up. So I figured I'd just shove it down there in case it's of use. I've got two faction warfare places because I run both Minmatar and Galante. Minmatar I do more solo, but we jump into battle sites. I jump into gangs for what do you call them? Battlefields, however it's said. For doing that stuff and get some LP that way. And then for the Galante it's more actual combat and just messing about with the guys, because it's kind of fun. To be honest, like, it's very weird in Galante because it's been pushed back so far by the Caldari, but every time you sort of come across it, it's a lot of people that are multi-boxing for the Caldari, and I don't kind of understand sort of why, because the old way that used to happen with Minmatar, and this has gone back about a decade, but what used to happen was you would get people that would join the Amar and they would push back Minmatar, and then they would join the Minmatar and they would push back Amar, and they just keep swapping sides, and that's what the sort of the multi-boxers would do, just to build up ISK, because the more they're pushing it back, the easier the fight. But at the moment, it's been quite a while where Galante is sort of pushed back to like 4 or 5 systems at the beginning, and it never really changes from that. It just keeps getting pushed back, and I don't quite know whether it's to do with like the Caldari being on the offensive, a lot of multi-boxers being there, a lot of normal gangs, because there is a lot of normal gangs in there. I'm not saying that it's all multi-boxers. So I don't quite understand why the situation is that way, but it means that if you want PvP and you're going in for small gang PvP, you can absolutely get it, because it exists there. You join the Galante and every time you want it, it is there. So something fun to do every once in a while. And I've not been making many other videos and stuff like this because I've not been doing much with EVE for the last while. I've not been able to get on for a lot of things, so when I've been on, it's been sort of AFK-ish activities, and I don't want to sort of film them. Or I do film them, but they're just not interesting. They're even more boring than this. It's just a case of go out to nullsec, do a bit of ratting or do a bit of ore harvesting or something like this. I'll put up one of the. Well, I might put up a video for both of them just to show what I'm doing, but it's not really anything that's efficient, it's not anything that's ISK positive, it's just something I randomly do. And I've been pissing about with the filaments more recently, just to see what I can sort of get of them. how efficient I can do it. And because one of the big, for me when I'm doing manufacturing, one of the big holes that I've got in the manufacturing setup is isogen. For those of you that don't know, isogen's a lot harder to get now. It's the most expensive component when you're building absolutely anything. If you have a look at any of the battleships, in fact I'll bring one up just now while I'm jumping through dangerous space. So if we just take for instance a Raven, and have a look at this in industry, if you're in industry, you'll see that of all the prices you've got sort of 40mm tritium, 40mm barite, 32mm mix, then it's sort of 16mm, 9mm, 13mm, but the isogen is up at 179, and that is the main price increase that has happened, because the other minerals, although they've gone up in price, they haven't gone up in price that much compared to the isogen. And the actual point where the isogen went up in price was literally when the Triglavian expansion happened, where all of those systems dropped out of high sec. And I think it was because there was some border or some safer nullsec systems. I've come across one in one of my things. There's one of the nullsec systems where my or one of the Triglavian systems where my POS used to be set up. So a lot of the places were very good for mining isogen have sort of disappeared, and it looks to me, just looking at player numbers dropping at that time, it looks like a lot of the people who were doing that mining have either sort of left the game or have shifted onto something else, and that was the main reason for why everything's so expensive. A lot of people were saying the other day when I was chatting in the comments and chatting on Reddit, a lot of people were talking about how the new expansion for industry is the reason that ships are so expensive. But if you actually look at this, you've got an extra 40mm in with the new sort of parts, so the life support, the core temperature and stuff like this for the battleships, but an extra 40mm doesn't explain a 365mm price tag. These were the last sort of before the expansion, I believe it was about 150mm for a Raven, and before sort of a couple of years before that, going like from a couple of years before the expansion, so about 5 years ago, going all the way to the back of the beginning of Eve, Ravens were roughly the same price. They were about 100 million for a Raven. It was just under 100mm to get a Scorpion. It was just over to get a Rock when the Rocks first came out, because of the material requirements, and it stayed that way for sort of 15 years, and then it went up a little bit with them sort of getting botters and people that were botting mining. As they kicked that out, the sort of price adjusted, and the price actually adjusted because the price of titanium going up, because the botters were usually doing this in high sec, and at the same time Code, that one alliance, Code, was responsible for a lot of this going down, because Code was killing a whole load of the botters. They were also killing a whole load of the legitimate miners, and pissing everybody off, especially with their little alpha tricks that kept happening. Because for those of you that don't know, there was a big problem with when alpha accounts came in, you could gank with an alpha account, and if you were running a sandbox on your computer, you could run multiple alpha accounts on the same computer. You're not supposed to be able to do that, and this was something that was happening where people were doing one-man ganks with alpha accounts, and then their main would come along and scoop everything. This was addressed, it was all sorted out eventually. It took several years for it to happen, but that had sort of driven up some of the prices, but it was mainly the tritium price or the titanium price, whereas the Triglavian expansion is what sort of pushed up the isogen price, and that's where you got a major increase in prices. Other minerals went up as well, but not to the same extent as isogen, and that's why everything got a lot more expensive, and it's never really sort of nullified out. And some people were talking about how this new expansion would address that because of the auto miners, and I've seen that they are bringing them into nullsec, which will help a bit, but going back to what happened with the posses, they had to bring them into high sec to be able to deal with this. But those are moon miners, so unless they're going back to putting standard minerals in moons, then I don't think that's going to address much. It's a different set of things that it's dealing with. It might bring some of this down. For those of you that don't know, the life support units have reinforced carbon, which is reinforced carbon fibre, which is a moon mined resource, or it's a reaction that's done from moon minerals. The core temperature units have a bit of everything, so both the pressurised oxygen and the carbon fibre are moon refined, and then these are planetary resources. And the exact same goes for, I forget what that is now, the auto integrity preservation fields. So the same again, you've got the carbon fibre from moon, and then the stuff that's mined off of the planets, the PI. So it might do something to make those cheaper, but that's nothing compared to the main price hole in it. And that's been the reason for me looking at different ways of sort of mining isogen and seeing if I can make that a little bit cheaper or a little bit better for myself. I am looking at local right now at all of those altishness bots and going, I wonder if this is how I die. Jump to the next one.
Warp drive active.
Oops, turned off a hard loadout. That's why I've got this overview here. For those of you that don't know, I've over to the side, I've got my overviews here. I run with 2 overviews normally. I've got one that is usually set up for all the combat stuff. I'll just show the 2 of them here while it's there. I've got to unlock them. So I've got one that's got me either general or combat, and this is what I usually use. And then the bottom one is either the loot stuff, so this is cans and wrecks. The one that's just plain gates for navigation, one that's a miner that will show up all of my roids and stuff like this, and then blues, so if I'm doing faction warfare I'll put blues on so that I can see the guys, but I don't accidentally click them when they're in a separate overview. And this overview here I'd actually just put up so that I don't have to adjust my camera to show that stuff, because I thought it was better so that other people could see, if I'm making a video, what's going on there. But then I just realised as I was transporting this that having a large overview to the side here that's just got tons of space for people is very good when you're transporting, because if you see a whole load of naughties then it makes it very apparent as opposed to the shorter list. So something that's useful. When you see this amount of Concord, you're just sat there going, uh-oh. See Villa. So we're in another one of the gankers territory, but there's not much in here. On my local list I've got most of the gankers sort of tagged out, and occasionally I'll come up here and help with one of the groups that does the anti-gank. So just a whole load of shield rebels and ospreys ready for a gank to happen, and then throw in some overheated reps and see if we can get the guy through his problems. What are we doing here? Same again, for those of you who don't know what I'm doing, because I've got a battleship micro warp here, 500 MN micro warp. You throw it on, it increases your speed a little bit faster, and then when it turns off, the speed drops back down, similar to the cloak jump. But this works on a bowhead. Unfortunately, it doesn't work on the other freighters. I wish they'd put that on them. But it's a way that you can change a 30-second warp into a 10-second warp, get a little bit more speed, and then between our shields, if we get attacked, then we just overheat both of the shields. And for the, for everything else, we just got reinforced in the lows. And I am usually running a clone that is chipped if I'm doing any amount of sort of constant hauling, so that my EHP is redonkulous, because it's always fun to escape one of those, although it's annoying not being able to have sort of proof of the escape unless you're video, because I've had a couple of good ones recently. Somebody blapped me on the way into Jita, and I was in a blockade runner, but they failed, and I do not know how they failed, because all I had on was just 2 hardeners. I didn't have any implants, I didn't have a shield extender or anything like that, and I was actually rigged for cargo. So in the lows there was no damage control, it was just just cargo expanders, because of what I was transporting. I was just being lazy, and in that being lazy I had warped to the station as opposed to my normal warp, which is a bookmark that's actually inside the station. So when I did the warp, I just did it normally. I didn't manage to dock because it did that thing where it throws you just a couple of 1,000 meters off of the dock point. So as I was slow boating, this guy hit me with a tornado, and it wiped out my shields, it wiped out my main. I didn't have my hardeners on as well because I just sort of come out of the warp. But it wiped out my shields, it wiped out my armour, and then it took me halfway through structure and the guy got absolutely wrecked. And I was laughing because at the time it was fully expanded, but I just dropped the stuff off a couple of systems down, so I was just going to park up where I normally park up, which was in G244 for that particular ship, and I was just like, oh, that was painful. Not only would he have gotten nothing if he had killed me, he also didn't manage to kill me. So it'd be funny to have a record of these, even if it was just like a little personal one in the combats. People who have attacked you. But it is nice you get combat logs for that, because that attack actually got me 20 mil. Because I sold the kill rights for it. So the day after, somebody activated his kill rights and popped them. So that was pretty funny. It is a good laugh. These are shiny, but I wish they'd make them dockable. Would be a bit of a laugh. So just while I'm doing the rest of this, I'm not going to say that. I was going to say something that would guarantee me to get killed. But I thought I'd just show these off while I'm here. So just in case you're wondering, my random stuff for faction warfare. I don't particularly know about this ship because I did build it for something, but I don't remember what. And it's been sat there for ages. And so I have weird naming conventions when it comes to stuff. I know that these are obviously faction warfare, but for a lot of things there is particular names, although none of these have them, except for that one. But I have no idea what this particular one was for. Oh, that was already. So yeah, I've got this one, which is a simple enough ship. Nice little thing, it'll kick out a couple of hundred. Nothing particularly special, and then it's got the, the Navy boosted shield booster to keep it sort of stable for a little while. Again, stability isn't a big issue in faction warfare because most fights don't last that long. Then we have the same again as a destroyer, another destroyer. This should, I believe, have implants inside. Yeah, it does. So, nice and simple, a little bit of armour tank, a little bit more problems, some vampires, and then just some general damage. Nothing too much, although more damage than the last one, but nothing particularly special. Then we have the bad fits. The bad fit and the aquarium are all the same. So these are just dual tanked. So a decent little tank for countering some stuff, a single scram, and then some small DPS, not much. And then a couple of remote repping ships if we want to go into fleets that are repping. Again, the stuff is in the bottom, but it's just keep us nice and boosted, a little bit of personal tank, and then some repping tank, and see how long that lasts. It is not a great one, but it'll sort of manage in general. And I do have some other stuff that will work with it. If I'm in with some other people, then I can cap chain it, so we'll see what's going on. But this thing in general, if I'm running these off, it'll give us a couple of minutes to keep people up. So, not too great, but it'll do. And it's nice and cheap, that's the point of these. Then a little blaster boat. Again, nothing too impressive. Close range, it'll kick out 500. Tank is pretty thin in general, but it's just got to last long enough to kill somebody, if it does that. Going into the more expensive ones, then you've already seen this is the passive tank. I actually opted to, what do you call it? So I opted to drop out one of these to add a little bit more DPS. And basically the reason for this is because if I come across somebody with the exact same fit, this DPS will allow me to end them before they can break through my tank. So it's sort of that trade-off if I come against another Brutix, which I have done a couple of times in the past. So it's one of those things, everybody sort of is trying for the best, and you're always going to come across something that you don't expect. So again here, simple little tank, single repar, a little bit of an armor buffer, and then some DPS, which is not a bad amount of DPS for this particular one, and then some vamps to keep it fed and to drain a little bit off of the others. And then if I'm just going for absolute stupidity, then we have this thing, because this thing is just fun. 1200 DPS of fun, dual captures, tank so that it'll maintain, and we should be able to ride through most people's stuff in that time, as you can see with the, what do you call it? Try that one more time. With the micro warp off, I'll last for 6 minutes, which is usually enough time, and then just some random drones in there just to create some fun. Nothing too impressive, but just some of the ships that I can like with in faction warfare. I usually take a different load down every time, and then what survives a weekend will survive a weekend. And this is one of the ways where my money sort of disappears in the game, because I will usually throw in roughly about $1 billion for any time that I'm doing it. So I'll throw $1 billion into ships. This setup here, I'm not actually entirely sure how much it is. There you go, so you got 460 million. So you're probably looking about $1 billion in fits in general for this. 85, 79. Yeah, so it's probably $1 billion's worth in there. There's a couple other ships down there that have been there already. I've got a couple more Brutixes, I've got a couple of drone boats, and various different things, but this is just a randomness that I do for a laugh. And I would definitely recommend the Galante Faction Warfare is actually quite fun. If you're just somebody that plays at the weekends especially, then it's just a good laugh, because they do all fleet up, they all get on comms, and it's something that they don't have much of a problem with people joining. They'll give you all the setup details, you can get onto their Discord or onto their TeamSpeak server and just have a laugh and go through that stuff. They will keep an eye out. If you're not active, then they'll boot you out of the server. No, I mean, when I say not active, I mean if you're sat hanging in a chat but you're not actually in the fleet, then you get punted, because obviously spies and stuff like that. But in general, it's not a big issue, and they are so random in what they do that even if somebody was spying, you couldn't sort of set up for them. So it's a good laugh, and definitely something I would advise to do. But it is something that needs a little bit of setup time, because where we are actually 3 jumps, or at least where I'm setting up, which is in Villery. It's 3 jumps away from Dodixie, which is your Galante trade hub.
Drive active.
So you've got the ability to sort of fit up some ships, take them down there. And what I would say is don't join directly into the into the faction warfare. If you set up a character in its own corp and then sort of do the corp join, so you don't leave your own corporation, you just join the faction warfare, and then you can leave it once you're done. So you could set up and run with faction warfare for a couple of days, or for just a weekend, and then come out of it, or just like 3 or 4 hours. You do have a timer of 24 hours when you want to rejoin it, but it will allow you to come in and come out of faction warfare, so that you can do other stuff and you're not sort of tagged with that. But do watch your standings, because obviously if you go too heavy against one particular faction, then you're going to drop your standings to others. It's not a big problem for me, because I've got mission runners all over the place and I maintain decent standings with every group. I actually have, I have not positive standings, I have negative standings to Armor as my base, but I still have some sort of more positive. But in general, I can travel anywhere without getting attacked, and I actually have positive standings to both Triglavian and Edencom as well, so I can sort of move most places without having too much of an issue. If you want to know how to do that, you basically have to drop into Boschwin and attack rogue drones. If you get the rogue drone kills, then a few of them will lift your standings to both sides, so you can sort of move about, not with impunity, because you do get random rogue drones all over the place, but you can sort of move about a little bit better in Boschwin, and you just have to worry about the players in general, which is the main problem in most places. But yeah, so it looks like I managed to make this down without even getting scanned. which I suppose is the advantage of moving on a Monday morning. So I figured I'd put that out there just as sort of showing some random stuff, and as a bit of explanation of why I've not been doing much stuff. Sort of life has gotten in the way and I don't have much time to do it. When I do, I don't have the ability to sort of concentrate on what I'm doing, so there's nothing that's heavier or requires concentration. Like, not even, I'm barely running any missions, just because I can't focus at all at the moment. So when I'm on Eve, I am entirely knackered. It's just sort of relaxing time for me. So there hasn't been much in the way of bundles or missions or abyssal or anything that most people would be sort of more interested or learn from. So I figured I'd just throw this out there. Or I will throw this out there. I originally figured that I would film the death of my ship, but it appears I survived all the way down. So I'll empty it, take it back up, and then at some point in the future I'll do some faction warfare. But yeah, thanks for watching. Fly safe. Oh, do us a favour, if you are sort of watching this and you have lasted this long, what is the main sort of activity? If you could put this down in the comments for yourself. What's your main activity in Eve if you're watching this? I'm very curious about what other people do in the game in general, because like for me, I do a lot of different stuff, but also for me Eve is actually more of a relaxing thing than an active thing. I like doing some of the more complex stuff. I like sort of PvP, I like mission running, abyssal. At the moment, some of that, some of the celebrations day stuff is kind of interesting to me. But I also just, part of the reason I do industry is because it doesn't require much thought and it's more of a passive activity that's a bit calmer that I can sort of do when I'm listening to something. So do us a favour and drop into the comments what you do when you're playing Eve. And if you don't play Eve and you're just watching that, please put that down there as well. Somebody mentioned this the other day, and I'm very confused and interested in sort of why you're watching if you don't play. Because I do watch games on YouTubiness that I don't particularly play myself, but it's usually because they're co-op games and I don't have that many people to play the big co-op games. So I'm particularly curious about that. So if you've got some time and stuff like that, drop in the comments what you do in Eve or outside of Eve. And thanks for watching. I'll chat to you later. Bye.